Well, I wouldn't ask the question about what are the barriers. I think the challenge for the European Union and for the world is to increase agriculture productivity. I think this is a really exciting time. We have a challenge of a rising global population. We know that our resources are scarce, our land, our water, our fertiliser, all of these things that we take for granted have to be managed really well. So the challenge, and if you like the barrier, is to design policy that really takes into account everything that goes into our food production, that ensures that farmers have the knowledge, that we give them the policies to produce more sustainably. It is about getting more, using less. And, you know, I really do believe that while the challenges are great, that the opportunities are also great. And I'm encouraged by the fact that more and more farmers, you know, are coming around to believing that there is a future for those who farm, because it's been tough for them, and that if they have the knowledge to do that, that there is a sustainable future. But we're a long way off that yet. The EU 2020 strategy is about smart, sustainable and inclusive growth. They're all buzzwords, but actually they really boil down to a very simple message. If we want to have a future on this planet, if we want to have growth and jobs, everything we do must be mindful of the environment, about our water resource, our biodiversity, our clean air, we have to tackle climate change, and that this vision for 2020 takes into account all of those things for every single sector of Europe, including agriculture and food production. And in a sense, it's a very holistic approach. I think we haven't brought everybody on board with it yet, and sometimes the message is cumbersome. But for me, it's very simple. It's about how do we get the best from what we have? How do we provide jobs for our children and a secure place for them to live in? And it's a big political question as well. It is about both economic security and political stability and peace. So a big message, but I think we can do it if everybody understands what it is about and gets on board. I think that we're living in very difficult times in the European Union, and I don't think it's just about a financial crisis and a crisis of the Eurozone. I think it's a much deeper issue. We've 27 countries that are now in the EU, and we haven't yet found the right cement to bind us together to do the right thing for not just the short term, but the medium and long term. We know what we need to do, but it's the politics of making it happen. And I think we need stronger leadership at the European Union level in order that people stay with this project, that people don't get disillusioned. Because what I always say when some are disillusioned is, what other options have we? Can we invent something better? And if we can't, then we have to make what we have work much better. And we can do it, but these are testing times. And because of the crisis that we are in Europe, it's testing for agriculture policy. Budgets are tight, everything is under pressure. So, you know what, the next few years are going to be difficult, but at least if we're part of the process, we can make it work, perhaps to our advantage. If we're not there, we're not in. Well, this concept of virtual land is only beginning to be discussed and realised. It's a really significant issue. I think there's a perception that Europe produces its own food from its own land. But in fact, the research shows us that in 2008, that the European Union imported the produce of 35 million hectares of land outside of the European Union in order to feed ourselves and our livestock. So that's virtual land import. We don't take the land in, but we take in the produce of it and the water used and all of those other ingredients. Now, the interesting issue around virtual land is this. If Europe's farming could become more productive, if we could produce more from our current land base, we will rely less on the land of the rest of the world to feed ourselves and our livestock. And from a global food security point of view, that's really significant. So the idea of virtual land, it takes a bit of getting your head around, but it's actually quite simple. And I think the more we understand how interconnected the world is around agriculture and food, the more we need to understand these concepts, like virtual land, like the idea of land sharing versus land sparing. In other words, do we require all farmers to have a bit of a habitat, or do we say some areas should be intensive and sustainable and we should keep ecological set aside in other parts of our country? So I think we are beginning to sharpen our thinking on these issues, the more knowledge we have. I think the problem for us all is how do we get this knowledge across to those farmers who will implement? And my big message about this is that farmers are the best tellers of their own story from an environmental point of view, and they will be the ones who will encourage their fellow farmers to get on board. And it's up to us to make the message acceptable, easy to understand, and less dictatorial. I think we need to encourage rather than impose. We haven't got the balance right yet.